it's easy to get away from it. I've talked to people who say, you know, I'm ready for the next thing in my career. Great. Why? Well, because it's time for the next thing. Why? Well, what do you want to achieve in life? Well, it's really important to me to have balance with my family because I've got young kids. Okay. So why do you want to step up to the next level? Because the next level is going to be more hours. It's going to be more travel. Well, because it's time for the next thing. Well, that's when I would ask you to take a look at your values. And those values might be, I've got young kids at home and I want to get it done, and I've got a great system of support, and I'm going to rock and roll and move up to the next level because those are my values. It's just the question is, what are your values and what's important to you right now in this moment?
Welcome to another episode of the Prosper Brief. I am your host, Jeremiah Wynn, Content and Marketing Manager here at Prosper. And today we have a very special guest joining us. It's none other than Stacie Barrett. Stacie is a respected leader in brand storytelling and internal communications. And today we're diving into the power of building a personal brand, staying authentic and standing out in a world full of noise. Let's jump in. Attention emerging leaders in food service and hospitality. Are you ready to accelerate your career? If so, join us for the Accelerate Conference on October 22nd through the 24th at the Omni Hotel in Dallas, Texas. Gain insights from over 1,000 collective years of business and leadership experience. Engage in more than 30 focused breakout sessions. Be inspired by 5 empowering general sessions featuring industry experts. Don't miss this opportunity to build valuable connections and elevate your leadership talent to give your business the competitive edge it deserves. Register today at prosperaccelerate.com. Stacie, welcome to the Prosper Brief. I'm so excited to have you here today. How are you?
I'm good. Excited about our conversation.
I'm really excited about our conversation too, because, we're talking about personal brands today. And I, for one, I'm a man who has had like a brand all my life, right? The last 15 years, at one point we had a clothing brand that came and went. I had a brand as far as like my identity in music, which was, like at first it was like Christian hip hop, then it was producing and then singing. And, just as I evolved, like just my brand continues to just evolve in that aspect. And then at one point, a part of my personal brand was being a writer. I was a screenwriter, and then I started doing videography. And it's funny because I used to feel like I had to compartmentalize like every single aspect of who I was. Like to this group of people, I'm this person. To this group of people, I'm this person. To this group of people, I'm this person. And then I get to Prosper, and this is the corporate side of things. And then I was really like, okay, who on earth am I going to be? And it wasn't until recently where I just realized it's fine for me to just be me all the time. Allow everybody to understand just the depth that I have, So I'm really excited to talk to you about this. And is it okay if I open up with the first question?
You can.
Perfect. So what is a personal brand in your opinion?
A personal brand is what you're bringing to the table. It really isn't about who you're working for. It's about what you can do to help others, what you value, what you stand for. And so what you've done in the past is important, and it's giving you skills and exposure. But when you're talking about your personal brand, you should be talking about what you can do next, how you're going to help someone, how you're going to support someone, what you're bringing to the table.
So you said a part of your personal brand is what you value and what you stand for. And I feel like a lot of people feel like they have to remove some of the values to create some sort of a persona that meets a brand for an audience that they hope to attain. What do you say to people who feel like they have to make that sacrifice of their core values or things that they stand for in order to fit a mold of that?
Ideally, you're finding an organization that meshes with your values, because if you find that organization, you're going to be able to be and bring something better to the table than you could if your beliefs clash with what the organization values. Sometimes in some cases, you're in a place that's a mismatch, and maybe that means it's time for you to move. Maybe it means it's time for you to raise your hand, and maybe because you got to put food on the table, it's time for you to stay silent. But it's going to be tough for a long haul if your values aren't aligned with the values of the brand that you're working with.
Have you had those situations where you had to just stay silent for a certain season because like you were in a situation where it didn't match who you were and your brand and your beliefs?
I have been ahead on my values before a company was ready to go there. And depending on where you are, depending on your experience, you might be able to help move the brand in the direction of your values, or you might need to find a different fit or a different place. It might be even just a different team within the same organization that you're in. I think it takes a lot of effort and it takes a lot of work to hide who you are. And there is something to be said about being a professional. That doesn't mean that when you go to work, you're not putting some air of professionalism onto what you do, but that doesn't mean, but your values, they hold true. So if you're being asked to actually do things that you don't believe, that don't mesh with your values, that would be your red flag.
Yeah. Okay, that's really interesting. So right now, obviously, this is 2025, and social media is such a huge part of people's personal brands, right? Like people will literally create their Instagram or their LinkedIn account to be seen as a certain person. Do you feel like it is, or do you see challenges that people have with connecting who they are personally and allowing it to reflect on their social media accounts?
So if you've got one voice on LinkedIn and a totally different voice on Instagram, yeah, that's going to be a challenge. You might share different types of content on different channels because you're targeting different markets with those different channels. But again, I think your baseline, your core, what's on the foundation of all those should align with your values. So if you are someone who's touting DEI on one channel and speaking against it on a different channel, that's not going to mesh. That's not going to be transparent. That's not going to be honest. That's not going to connect with people. You don't have to talk about that on either channel if that's not something that you value, but it needs to go back to your values. And you might talk more about what you could do for an organization, and you might on LinkedIn, and you might lean more into your creative on Instagram. The channels are built to reflect different parts of you, but again, they're standing on the one person that is you. And a lot of people create a brand online that is not them at all. And I think that is where you run into challenges. So taking a step back and thinking about, what do you value? What skills do you have? What skills can you get paid for? And then thinking about that can help drive the type of content that you share, how you tell your story on the different channels.
Okay. So one thing about social media is that people, they want to stand out, right? They want to create this brand, and sometimes it may be reflective of, their influences. But the biggest thing is we want to stand out and show our individuality. So when you're a part of an organization, especially like if you're a part of a big organization, like call it Yum or Chipotle or whatever, how do you create your own personal brand to where you stand out? And not so much to where you're conflicting with others in the organization, but you're able to be you and shine.
Right. And I think you can use, if you're working for a great brand and you're proud of what they're doing and you're proud of what your team is doing, you can share your wins on the channels. You guys are launching a new product. You've got a great new menu item. Share it. Talk about what you did to bring it to life. Talk about what your team did. Celebrate successes. So I think that's how you tie your brand in. You have to be conscious, though, that if you're bringing your brand to the table and attaching it to your name, everything that you are saying online can be attached to your brand. So you want to be thoughtful about what you're sharing to make sure that you're not putting the brand at risk. That's why it's great when your values also align with the brand values. It makes that challenge less challenging, because then you can also talk about your functional expertise too. So if I'm in the world of communication, so if I want to talk about communication systems or being a better communicator, those are things that are in my functional wheelhouse. So you can talk about what you know, tips, you can share articles and best practices and things that resonate from either your industry or your subject matter expertise.
How do you help someone discover who they're going to be and their personal branding?
I think this is unique to everyone, and this is what you bring to the table. I don't think that you start by looking at other people. You have to start and look inside yourself. I'm going to say, in our wonderful world of AI, I would start with paper and pen and thinking about things. You can do a skills assessment, a motivational assessment, and see, okay, what motivates you? What do you love? What are you good at? My strength finder says my number one strength is learning. So that's something that I know. That's something I want to fill my cup up with. And that's something I want to talk about. And it helps. My learning helps with part of my branding because I like to learn things and I like to share what I've learned. So understanding who you are is first. So you can use third-party tools if you just need to go through the exercise. But think about what gets you excited about your current role. What doesn't? What gets you excited in your personal life? What doesn't? Think about the things that drive you and write it down. I keep at the front of my notebook a little Venn diagram with 3 circles. What I value, what I'm passionate about, and what I'm good at. And I use that as a starting point to think about where I want to focus and build the most in my life. And that's also the foundation of the personal brand.
I love that. So, a part of my journey, even to get here, the reason why I've learned to compartmentalize different pieces of who I am is because in certain relationships, there were people who would reject certain aspects of me, you know? So, like, that if one person loved the way I rapped, they would hate the way I sang. So then if one person loved the way I wrote screenplays, maybe they didn't like a different aspect of me. So that's kind of like why I began to compartmentalize myself. And I ended up coming to this place where I felt like I just was not empowered to bring all of me to the table. And it seems like you're so optimistic and you're so knowledgeable of who you are, and you bring yourself and the awareness of who you are to the table at whatever organization you work at. So my question is, where did you learn that?
That's a great question, and I think I learned it along the way. I think one of the things that in the beginning, and I'm going to go back to elementary school days, is I just didn't feel comfortable with myself. And it made me shy, and it made me quiet, and it made me uncertain. Because I spent a lot of time thinking about, am I saying the wrong thing? Am I doing the wrong thing? I think that's why people don't post, because they don't want to post the wrong thing. I think I had the opportunity to do some performing arts that helped build a little bit of self-confidence being someone else first. And then I got self-confidence in being myself. And part of it is doing the work of thinking about who you are and what you care about, and not changing yourself in a way that you're no longer doing what you care about and being who you are. I don't want to have to erase myself. I modulate, right? You're still going to adjust. There is different energy levels for different spaces. There's different communication styles for different people that you're talking to. But you're not talking to your kids in the same way that you're talking to a coworker, but you're still being yourself. But you can still be yourself in both of those places.
Yeah. No, that's I'm kind of like, my journey to who I am today is similar to you, where I was always like this shy, very soft-spoken kid, always made fun of and teased at young ages, and like almost like bullied a little bit, and then eventually we were homeschooled for like a couple years, and I'm looking at my brother. He has friends who he can call. My sister, she has friends who she can call and hang out with. And because I was so shy, insecure, and quiet, I was lonely. So then when I go to college, I decided to I'm going to be the loudest version of who I can be. I put on like this persona of this guy who's just not shy, who's willing to go out, get somebody's number, be a class clown in school, like all that. And eventually, like after all that worn off, I found myself 10 years after, my college experience, finally realizing and getting comfortable with who I am. And it's like, it's a lesson that I feel like I wish I would have learned, like, when I was 17, 18. Like, instead of putting out a persona that's not who I am, just being completely who I am, just being me, understanding that, like, I'm goofy. I feel like I'm kind of smart. I'm a little smart. I'm not a genius, but I'm kind of smart. I care about certain things. I'm very passionate about people. And I feel like now that I bring that to the table, and really it's been the last year has just done so much for me as far as like who I am, And I feel like now that I do have this awareness, I'm almost preaching to other people, just be yourself. I was talking to my brother the other day. Don't feel like you have to prove anything to anybody. Just be true to you and be true to what your goals are.
I think that's so important. And I don't know many 17-year-olds who have figured that out yet. That's not normal. It's normal to be figuring it out and exploring who you are. So it's a journey. It takes time. For some of us, we get there earlier than others. Very few people get it in their teendom. But it's just you have to learn because you're trying to fit in, right? And I think I'm okay with not fitting in, but I want to belong. So, and I think there's a difference, right? I think that you get to a point where you understand what your differences are and what you're bringing to the table that is different, and loving that, and creating space for lots of different people with different thoughts and different perspectives, and the beauty of that. And that's the organization that I want to belong to, an organization that's thinking about how do we bring in all these different perspectives? How do we create space and give voice and be curious and learn? And those are the things that I value, and those are the things that are important to me. And that's how I try to live my life.
I love the differentiation between not fitting in and belonging, because a lot of people, and honestly, no offense to women, but I know a lot of girls who hate their best friends. Like, some of the closest people that they're with, they despise them for some weird reason, but they stay in those situations because it's just people. And I feel like when you belong somewhere, there's a different level of connection that you get. There's a different level of reciprocation and love and peace and joy and camaraderie. So I think that's so good, because so many people sacrifice their values. They sacrifice what they stand for in order to fit in. And me, growing up in church, being this, homeschooled kid, there was a lot a lot of values that I never wanted to go against, and it did cause me to be isolated. But now at this point in my life, I'm like, whoever accepts me in whatever community I feel like I can belong in, that's my family. That's where I fit in. So I love that.
That's right.
So I want to ask you about code switching, because you've been in the corporate world for a while. And I know for my mom, the way my mom answers the phone to this day is like extremely professional. Like, she's pronouncing her R's perfectly. Like, everything is so great. For you, do you feel like, so obviously for certain people, do you feel like they do feel like there's a part of their culture that they have to leave at home when they do enter into the corporate world?
I think sometimes. I think, in an ideal world, everything would be on the table. I think, again, you've got to understand the culture of the organization that you're in, and where they can go and where they're comfortable with. So there's a balance, right? And I think sometimes it's just a change in tone. But again, the values stay true. So that's the difference. There is a different, one of the things I do for fun is I teach dance, for example. When I'm talking to students in the dance class, to kids, I'm not speaking the same way that I do in the office. But who I am and what I'm about is not changing. So I think there might be a level of professionalism that you need to level up and level down, but who you are shouldn't change. If in the ideal world, who you are and what you care about and what is important to you is still there, and that's not a switch I'm willing to turn off.
Yeah. Do you feel like Because everything you're saying about values, because I obviously have core beliefs, but do you feel like the average person working in corporate, they do have values that they feel like they stand on, or are they only focused on their progress in corporate, like in the people you've met?
I think it's easy to get away from it. I've talked to people who say, you know, I'm ready for the next thing in my career. Great. Why? Well, because it's time for the next thing. Why? Well, what do you want to achieve in life? Well, it's really important to me to have balance with my family because I've got young kids. Okay. So why do you want to step up to the next level? Because the next level is going to be more hours. It's going to be more travel. Well, because it's time for the next thing. Well, that's when I would ask you to take a look at your values. And those values might be, I've got young kids at home and I want to get it done, and I've got a great system of support, and I'm going to rock and roll and move up to the next level because those are my values. It's just the question is, what are your values and what's important to you right now in this moment? And I think as long as you go back and frame it with that, you're going to be in good shape. That said, to your question, do most people know? I don't think people think that question. I think people think, I need to do, I need to, I've been on LinkedIn and everybody's getting promoted. So I should be getting promoted. Or, but again, think about what you want. If your value is, I want to make a huge impact on an organization, I want to drive change, and that riles me up, and I want my kids to see a professional success, and that fires me up, then step on the gas and do it. Again, it just depends on what your values are, and you need to know what they are, and you need to take the time to figure that out.
Yeah, I love that. Lately, I've definitely been reflecting so much, and I've been very introspective about the things that I'm doing and why I'm doing it. Because, and I say this in another episode, a previous episode, I was talking about just my music and the ambition that I have for music, and how at one point I wanted to be this star, and then I took a step back and I was like, well, no, exactly what I wanted to do, I'm doing it. I can't be, I shouldn't have, I shouldn't be discontent with where I'm at right now, because if I look back 10 years ago, this is exactly what I wanted to do. I wanted to be able to be an artist. I wanted to be able to write. I wanted to be able to impact people. The numbers and the money and the financials, that had nothing to do with it. This is something that I just love, and this is like a passion of mine. And I feel like just taking that step back and being introspective, it just helps. And it also gives you so much more satisfaction, because you realize, yeah, sometimes you are looking through the window and you're looking at the lens of all these other people and you're comparing yourself. And that's just, you're never going to have any joy when you're comparing yourself to the next person.
And you're never going to be satisfied either. And again, it does not mean that you shouldn't be striving to grow and get that next big thing. But make sure you're doing it for the right reasons, and for doing it for a reason that's going to fill up your cup. And that's, people ask me, why do I stay optimistic? Because I focus on filling up that cup. And sometimes it is heavy into work and pushing and learning and creating. And sometimes it's recharging. And both things are important.
That's awesome. I love that. Okay, so the next questions, I want to get, I kind of want to switch it up into like the employer's role in personal branding. So why do you think employers should encourage their people to have personal brands within the organization?
Your people are an extension of your brand. And so if you are teaching people how to understand what they love, what they're passionate about, there's a few things that are going to happen. One, as they skill build and learn and share, they are improving themselves. And two, they are being a great ambassador for your brand. In today's world, with AI getting into the wonderful world of the way that we're looking at media and communications, social is where advertising is happening more than any other place now. AI generated search is what's driving people to your site. So that makes human content and these storytellers that you've got, this asset that you have, a big part of your brand. They're attracting talent to your brand. They are attracting customers to your brand. And if you're not thinking about how they're telling that story and sharing with them content ideas and coaching them on how to build that brand, you're missing out on something that your competitors are doing.
Can you tell us an example of a corporation right now that is empowering their internal people to have personal brands and how that's affecting their organization?
I think a lot of brands are doing different things. So some brands are really focused on great executive voice. So McDonald's CEO is often sharing, he's on video, he's sharing his results. And you're seeing more and more executive leaders tell their stories, and it's actually getting media coverage in a way that press releases used to, and is now being driven by a LinkedIn post. It's also a way to communicate to your employees. But also, and this is something that we see at Domino's, we celebrated our franchisees every time they opened up a new store, and that was just done by an individual who worked at Domino's who also knew the franchisees. So there are ways, whether it's systematic or not, it's probably happening within your organization, whether it's systematic or not. So by helping and thinking about this and talking about how people can do it, it's going to improve it. The first personal branding for social media was a leadership training class that I took at work. And it really made me think. It was years and years ago, but it really made me think about how I learn, how I share, and how I show up online.
Okay, that's really great. Do you feel like with the rise of AI, there is going to be a lot of competition for employees to kind of stand out and rise above just the new technological age we're going to?
I think AI is going to make more and more content, and we all know we're all content overloaded. It's also going to help synthesize content. I think that people who depend solely on AI to generate their content will find that they have done an excellent job of creating decently written generic content because AI is the average, right? It's taking all the great things from all over and creating the average. So if everyone leans into it exclusively, I wonder what's going to happen to these channels and how they're going to evolve. And if we're going to get to a point where between promotional content and AI driven content, if it's starting to lose some meaning. So I think it's really important for you to be aware, to use and play with these AI tools to stay ahead of what's going on, but to be wary of exclusively delivering AI generated content without thought and process and bringing yourself to the table. What makes it different? What makes it you? What makes it unique? If you've genericized everything, then everything will be nothing, right?
Yeah, yeah, that's great. I was so like sometimes I like use ChatGPT to refine some of like an email or something, or just to make sure there's no spelling errors. And
Sure.
the other day I was using like I made a post and I specifically used the word parameters because that's like that word means it. When I think of like parameters of like the structure of your family, your upbringing, I feel like you're empowered with limits. You know, you're not limited, but you're empowered, and these are the things that you have to do. So that word is something that I do value. And I put in ChatGPT and it changed that word. And like that's so interesting because that's like a key piece of like my belief in how I am, you know? Like I use that word very often because I feel like it's a word that's not used often enough. And if I say boundaries, it completely misses, you know, the essence of who I am and what I'm trying to say. And I thought it was so funny because AI, like it doesn't have a soul and it doesn't have a heart. It's like you said, it's like the average of everything. But we have hearts, we have souls, we have experience, we've experienced love, joy, frustration. And I think a lot of people who I'm seeing, and they're obviously just chat GBTing things, I feel like they're kind of like, I feel like they're kind of like playing themselves, you know, because the audience that they're trying to reach and the message that they're trying to tell, if it's so generic, they can't really get the essence of what you mean, you know. And I feel like there's
Right.
everything is very nuanced.
I think it's going to be a very fine balance. I think If you're not paying attention to the tools, you're going to be in trouble. And if you only know how to use the tools, you're going to be in trouble. And so using them thoughtfully and strategically, rather than maybe creating the list of content, maybe it helps you come up with keywords or make sure you don't have a typo, right? If it depending on what you're doing, but if you're trying to come up with thought leadership, for example, you have to think.
Yeah. Yeah, it's kind of in the name, right? Yeah, absolutely. And I've enjoyed just doing this podcast, meeting so many like brilliant people and getting to understand the way they process things and their experiences and their life. And it's everything's so unique. And I'm just like, I feel so blessed even to have this be talking to you, with your experience and your expertise. It's so fun.
And I think I'm hopeful that with all of this stuff that's coming around, there's more of this. There's more of these conversations and communication and connection. I think that's why podcasts are resonating so much with people, because it's not just about the headline. It's not just about the one-liner. It's people want to go deeper, and they want to, and we know, as of this recording, Gen AI can only do a 5-second, 8-second video. So there are real humans behind it. And I think that's important.
I think it's very important. What would you say to somebody who does feel very insecure and they feel like AI is better than them? So they're going to continue to they're going to put out content, but it's going to be heavily AI based.
Listen, AI is better than you at probably some things, right? For me, I like to write, but analyzing data, AI is going to do faster for me. Writing, I'm going to spend time. It takes me longer to write it on AI sometimes than it does for me to write it myself. So I would say, think of AI as an assistant that needs a lot of instruction early in career, very green, and use it for the places where you are the weakest to help support you. And don't stop learning because you've got this tool, right? The more you learn, the more you'll know what you don't know. And I think we're not going to have the knowledge in our toolbox that the AI tools are going to have, because they have all the information on the web. So it would be a joke to say that we're smarter than AI, right? But to your point, we're bringing something different to the table. So again, that goes back to your soul, the pieces, the human pieces that you're bringing to the table, your creativity, your soft skills. I think soft skills are going to be the hardest skills that we need, because the soft skills are the part where the AI does not have strength at this particular point. And I bet your soft skills are better than what the AI can generate.
Amen. No, I love it. Don't stop learning. So important. I feel so bad for the next generation of people because they have so many tools that we didn't have access to. So it's like I had to learn things the hard way. And I know I was talking to you about just music. And like I remember I would grow up, I'd be playing the drums. I was homeschooled, so I'd be practicing the drums for 8 hours a day. Then I learned to produce music. Then I learned to write and I learned to sing and all this. But I actually was able to put the effort into it because honestly, it was hard. It wasn't easy. So now with like different AI tools, it allows you to just skip over an entire process and then it just creates what you think. And it does make me sad because I'm like having that type of a handicap, that type of a crutch, it is going to limit you unless you continue to keep learning. So I think that's such a great piece.
It's interesting too, because there is joy in the learning. There's joy in the failure because you figured out, okay, that didn't work, but I can do it. And I can sit and I can work and think about something and get into a flow on something that's hard. And that's good for you. That's good for your brain. That's good for your pieces. So I think for the next generation, leaning into playing that instrument or something that they can't do with the AI, but I think there will always be something to learn. There will always be something to learn. It'll just be different.
How do you think that your personal brand is going to evolve over time?
I think the skill sets that I bring to the table will change over time, and they should. I think I will hopefully uh, grow in skill sets, but I think too, as you grow in your career, you shift a little bit from the doing side of things to the coaching and helping and bringing others along type of thing as well. So I think as I continue to grow, that the percentage of that begins to shift, because the goal is, hey, this next generation with all of this with all these wonderful tools in your toolbox, how do you get through this meeting? The AI cannot do that for you. How do you do all those things? So teaching and helping people with those soft skills, I think, as our time changes, those values, again, they stay the same. Maybe they grow a little bit, but I think the skill set's just ever changing, and as it should. I think anyone who thinks that they're done is going to be in trouble. Because we should always be learning and growing.
Can you tell us, and I have a couple more questions, then we're going to wrap this up, but can you tell us a moment in your career where you stuck to your core values, your personal brands, and your personal belief, and was uncomfortable at the time, but it eventually paid off?
Yeah, I will go with something that Black women may know familiar with. One thing that I decided to do is not straighten out my hair, which doesn't seem like a big deal. Is it about my core values and beliefs? Yes, in part because this is an important part of who I am. It's also because I value time and not the 3 hours of straightening out said hair. I love to exercise and take care of myself and go out in the rain. All of these things don't work with the straight hair. So it's a little bit different in certain places. It's much, much better now, but I do think it had an impact, and I got feedback on it. And so, you work on ways to try to make it as professional as possible. Um, but it was important to me, and I knew it was important to me, and it was important to other women in the organization to see it. And I got that feedback as well. And it's the same thing from standing up and sharing my personal story through my career and what it was like being a Black woman in the workplace. And it wasn't something that I would have felt comfortable doing at a certain point in my career. And then it became okay. So you grow, and it was great to share. And I know it made a big impact, and it made an impact on people who look like me and people who don't look like me and who want to create belonging in their organization. And so sometimes we do hard things, but oftentimes, if they're grounded in who we are and what our values are and what we want to send out to the world and how we want to present ourselves, it all works out in the end.
So, if you don't mind me asking, two questions. One, how long into your career did you stop straightening your hair? Or were you?
I would say it was probably almost 10 years into my career before I stopped straightening.
And what made you feel like straightening your hair was like the move to go to that first 10 years?
It, to be honest, it was a way that I was wearing my hair. And although I always loved the curl, I think our curls are beautiful, and I think we should wear them. Again, I think over time you become more comfortable in yourself. This is a part of myself, and I will still straighten it out every once in a while, because it's also great that it can do both of those things. But this is my favorite way, and this is the way that I feel the most comfortable, and this is me, and I want to bring me.
Yeah, I love that. I have two daughters, and they both have extremely curly hair, especially like my older daughter. She's 5. It's just like, she always has this cute little afro. And I love that in society now, because of women like you who are speaking up, like a lot more Black girls are more comfortable being themselves. You know, they're more
Yeah.
comfortable in their hair. I remember seeing a documentary in the early 2000s by Chris Rock called Good Hair. And it just talked about just the value of like Black women in their hair and just the history of it. And I just love to look back now, the last, since like, I think 20 years ago that movie came out, like you kind of like see a difference with women embracing short hair, embracing even wigs, not feeling, and it's like, it's so funny because, you know, Black women felt like, oh, only we wear wigs. But it's like, no,
Everybody's wearing a wig now.
everybody does it.
Everybody
And
wears
it's
a
like,
wig.
yeah, and
Okay.
back then it's just like, oh, is that a weave? You know, it was like this weird
Right.
thing. And now it's like, there's just so much more of security that they have that Black women
And
have in
there's
themselves.
transparency, right? Famous people are going on, showing it, you know, the whole beauty industry is a whole different conversation, but I think again, that's people being a little bit more honest and transparent about what they're doing to create the person that they are. And if it can help you feel and be more authentic, great.
And I think transparency is so important, especially as we talk about personal branding, because like Ryan Leake said, you can learn more from someone's failure than from their success, you know? So like when you're transparent and you are honest and vulnerable with how you feel, and and you do allow us to see this is where you were before, after you had the epiphany or that moment in your life that changed you, this is what happened after. Allowing them to see both stages is very important.
It
Because
is.
yeah, go on.
Because that's where when something goes wrong, that's when you have an opportunity to fix it. That's when you have the opportunity to create new processes. That's when you have the opportunity to learn something new. If everything is hunky dory all the time, you don't grow, or it's much harder to do so.
Well, and it also puts a mental cap on your mind because it's like, if you're perfect, what's next? What's the next level of perfection?
Right.
Yeah. It's like, what is it?
I got it all taken care of, and nobody does, right? And I think maybe also you were talking about where does it come from? It also comes from knowing that everybody messes up. Everybody makes mistakes, and everyone learns from them. Hopefully.
Yeah. Hopefully. No, I love that. It's so crazy to me because like my whole life, I've definitely been in growth mindset. I was like told how bad I was growing up. So it's like, I always knew that there was something better than me. So I was always like learning, always trying to grow, always working hard. But it's so interesting to like meet people who really feel like there's someone else perfect. Like they look up to someone who is perfection. And it's just like, you're kind of playing yourself because you can get there. Yeah, it doesn't exist. They fail. They're just like you. But what do you do when you fail? And what do they do when they fail? You know, are you learning from your mistakes, or are you succumbing to those, feeling like you're never going to be above that failure? You know?
Right. I think as humans, it's natural to go into, what did I do wrong? Sad me. It's easy to do that, and it's what most of us do naturally. We're very mean to ourselves. If you write down what you say to yourself, you would never, ever, ever say anything close to that to someone that you care about, or even just someone you knew as an acquaintance. So, you know, take a look at what you're saying to yourself, and don't use those mistakes as failures. Use them as opportunities. You know, my very first job, my leader said, you know, Stacie, you need to get organized. You don't know what you're doing next. You know, and at my last job, they asked, what do people think of when you think of Stacie? And organize was number one, right? So one of the things that came to mind, you can learn to do things, you can grow, but you have to hear what people are saying to you and then do something with it.
Oh my gosh. You guys, Stacie has been absolutely amazing on this episode of the Prosper Brief. Thank you so much for being here. Like, I'm just going to let that be the last word. But thank you. It was so nice to get to know you and to have the conversation. I know the audience is definitely going to be impacted by this.
It's a pleasure.